Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. I'm Michelle Sakirka, President and CEO with the New Jersey Business and Industry Association, and it's my pleasure to welcome you today to a conversation with Senator Cory Booker and the CEO of the NJEDA, Tim Sullivan. I'd like to first thank our partners for this program today, New Jersey Chamber of Commerce, Tom Bracken, the Commerce and Industry Association of New Jersey, Tony Russo, the Chamber of Commerce of Southern New Jersey, Christina Renna, and of course, the New Jersey Economic Development Authority. So it's now my pleasure to introduce Senator Cory Booker. Cory Booker has served as New Jersey's junior U.S. Senator since 2013, and as you know, he was previously the 26th mayor of our city of Newark. And of course, he recently had an impressive run to be the Democratic nominee for President of the United States. Senator Booker has brought an innovative and consensus-building approach to tackling some of the most difficult problems facing New Jersey and our country. He has emerged as a national leader in criminal justice reform and has advocated for economic policy that expands opportunity and increases in wages. He's been a champion of women's rights, affirmative action, and single-payer health care. And right now, in the midst of COVID, he is on the front lines ensuring New Jersey can both sustain and recover and ensure that New Jersey gets its fair share. So we thank you for your battles on the Hill on our behalf, Senator Booker, and I'd like to turn the program over to you.
I'm so grateful. Thank you very much, Michelle. It's just great to be on with you all again, as well as the NJBIA membership. There are people who are members or that are business owners, really leaders in our state that make New Jersey so New Jersey strong. I feel grateful to be on with you. And I also feel grateful to be on with somebody who's just extraordinary. And in this crisis, he has really been a great champion for our state. I was hoping that there was going to be music playing and lights flashing when I say his name, but Tim Sullivan from NJEDA is joining us together. It's really a pleasure that he's here, and I know he will have a lot of details as well. Tim's been working with me and the governor and state business leaders to get a lot done, and I'm just proud of the work they're doing together. And so this is a challenging moment for the state and our nation, and frankly, the world. We're confronting a lot of pain and challenges that are coming on from a pandemic and economic downturn. And here clearly in America, as there are hundreds of thousands of people in all 50 states that are marching and protesting, is a time where you hear deeper cries for justice. Much of my work over this last month or so has been really intense negotiations on legislation to address a lot of these issues. And I'm proud that we're making some good progress. I really want to just update you very quickly on some of the things that are going on. You know, one of the reasons why I worked to get on the Small Business Committee as your United States Senator is because in New Jersey, small businesses are such a major part of our well-being, our lives, our communities, and our economic strength. And I'm glad to be there, especially now because of the implications that this pandemic is having for many businesses, or many people who now are, who had solid businesses just a few months ago, are facing some tremendous struggles. Out of the second round of PPP, the latest state breakdown that my office has received from the Small Business Administration is actually some really decent numbers. New Jersey has approved over 133,000 loans for a total of about $16.8 billion we've been able to bring into our state and get into our state businesses. But I will say, as good as those numbers are and sound, it's just not equitable in terms of our share of PPP funds relative to the number of businesses we have in our state. And that's why I'm trying to do even more to get more federal resources into and accessible to our businesses. Reports have actually shown that, unfortunately, lenders in this whole crisis all over the country do not prioritize everyday small businesses. They're looking at ones that have more established banking relationships and much larger businesses. Therefore, a lot of the family-owned businesses that gave character to our cities and our towns, I think of a lot of those small businesses we relied on when I was just a kid growing up in Harrington Park, New Jersey. These are contracting services, barber shops, salons, retail plazas, pizza shops. These are the ones that we've got to make sure in New Jersey are getting their fair share and getting resources. And that's why I've been working hard on the SBA and banks directly, in fact, for more information on how and what type of loans they've received, so we can hold them accountable to making sure there's a more equitable distribution of loans. of the latest $310 billion that we were getting out the door on the federal level, we were able to get 60 billion of it designated for community development financial institutions, CDFIs, or minority development institutions, MDIs. These funds are really helpful, and they've been used to support programs like NJEDA's Cdfi Emergency Loan Reserve Fund and Cdfi's Emergency Assistance Grants programs, which I know Tim can go more into. These are really solid programs for us. Cdfi lenders in New Jersey have launched different programs that offer actually really favorable terms to small businesses and nonprofits and faith-based institutions all throughout New Jersey. And so hopefully that $60 billion funding directed towards CDFIs and MDIs will be able to make hopefully life better for a lot of our business owners, nonprofits, and faith-based institutions around our state. And many of you know, and this I have to thank the leaders of our small business committee who have been sort of working with pressuring, cajoling, and didn't take a lot for some of them to change the terms of the PPP program. Well, we got that done in the House. The Senate took action and passed that legislation as well this week, and it's providing a lot more flexibility for the PPP program, frankly, like businesses all across New Jersey were asking us to get done. And now this gives an expanded period to spend PPP dollars. This idea that you only had 8 weeks to do it was impractical and frankly just wrong. It's now expanded that to 24 weeks. And it also changes the requirement that 75% of the funds be used for payroll. Less than that, now it's 60%, allowing more dollars to go to utilities, rent, and other overhead type expenses that businesses have. We need to do more. I'll be very frank with you. I wanted to go further, but at least this bill now is headed to the president's desk. And so I want to just, the last area I want to go over is just the priorities I have for COVID for this next package that I'm trying to push into this June work period. But I think Mitch McConnell's timeline is slower, maybe in the July. But this fourth package, we've seen the House of Representatives put something they call their HEROES Act up. And so it really falls to us in the Senate to try to pick up and get something done. And a lot of these provisions that are really important to me are in that House package, like the SALT deduction, returning that for the state of New Jersey. And so I'm picking up the fight for a lot of those here on our side. And that means carving out funds I want to see going to nonprofits, because so many New Jersey nonprofits are really in bad shape. It sets aside funds specifically to be used for banking institutions for small businesses. I think that that's an important step. But critical for me is really those mom and pop stores, Main Street shops, small businesses in our state. And I'm already put together a bipartisan bill in the Senate with Senator Daines from Montana to bring assistance to our everyday small businesses. It's called my Relief Act for Main Street, and it would create a $50 billion fund for small business local relief funds that would go to provide direct assistance really to cities, counties, and states to set up these local relief funds. Well, hey, we've got one here with the NJEDA's Small Business Emergency Assistance Grant Program already. And my goal is to fund things like that because NJEDA has a commitment to getting resources to our small businesses to do it in a diverse and inclusive way. And that's why I'm excited about this legislation that is building bipartisan support. And so I'm going to conclude just by saying that this is the urgency for me as your senator. Bring resources back to New Jersey. I was on a call with the governor about an hour ago, talking just about the funds for state and local governments, because the last thing any business, any New Jerseyan would want to see right now is massive layoffs in first responders. I'm going to be working a lot this summer to bring home the resources, to get this next package, to hopefully be able to sit here and tell you about the tens of billions of dollars more that went to New Jersey businesses, particularly small businesses, from this COVID relief package. That's my goal, in addition to getting state resources, in addition to getting us resources to meet not only the economic challenges, but still a lot more resources we need to meet the health challenges. And you all know that those two are interrelated. I will finally say that this is the great experience of my life in the sense that it's been a horrific crisis, but the great experience for me has been how well New Jersey organizations, institutions, individuals are working together. There's no party fault lines that separate us. There's no geographic fault lines that separate us. I'm having a great experience to see how this state is pulling together in cooperation, in coordination to get us through this crisis in the way that we've done before, showing how Jersey strong we are. And I'm grateful to have a little bit of time to share all of this with you and to let you know that we're going to continue the fight. And I look forward to the next opportunity I have to update everybody. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Senator Booker. Always a pleasure to host you, and thank you for your leadership on behalf of the state and your constituents. We know how hard you're working in DC, and we know how responsive you are to the needs of the business community. You've been extremely supportive to the coalition letters that we have sent, and thank you for continuing to advance those on behalf of our businesses and nonprofit in New Jersey.
Thank you. And Michelle, Tim is amazing in every way, but he didn't put a tie on today. I don't understand. Am I not tie worthy, man? It's still, maybe it's not me. Maybe I shouldn't take this so personally.
I haven't worn a tie other than the day I went to the governor's press briefing in like several months. It's been very liberating.
Okay. So you're saying the governor is more important than your senators? Wow. Okay.
He does sign the checks for me, so yes.
That's a good point. That's a very good point. You're a smart man, wise person. Michelle, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Senator. Thank you. It is now my pleasure to introduce the CEO of the New Jersey Economic Development Authority, Tim Sullivan. In Tim's normal everyday role before COVID hit, he was leading the Murphy administration's efforts to transform the EDA into a comprehensive economic development organization focused on New Jersey's long-term economic competitiveness in strategic sectors, and was doing a great job leading that effort for sure. Tim was overseeing the creation of the Office of Economic Transformation and working toward igniting the innovation economy, which we know is so important for New Jersey's sustainability and business success. During the pandemic, Tim has worn, I don't even know how many hats at this point, Tim, how many things you could possibly be leading, but you're an incredible leader for the economic efforts in our state, and we applaud you for that. Spearheading EDA's efforts to bring relief and financial assistance to New Jersey businesses and nonprofits as expeditiously as possible through a host of grant and loan programs. And we know that funds are so tight, and we know, though, that you have taken an approach for the efficient and expeditious distribution of those funds as they become available to you in order to make them available to our businesses and our nonprofits across the state, and we thank you for that. On Tuesday at 9 a.m., the EDA will be launching an expanded Small Business Emergency Assistant Grant Program, and Tim's here to talk to us about that today. So Tim, it's all yours.
Great. Thank you, Michelle, and thank you for those kind words. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you to you and Christina and Tony and Tom and your great teams for hosting us today and for everything we've been doing together, not just in this crisis, but before this as well. On behalf of Governor Murphy and our entire team, first of all, I want to thank everyone for taking the time to listen in. Obviously, if you're listening in here, you're interested in COVID relief programs, which means you're going through this economic crisis that is paired with our the public health crisis. One of course drives the other. We've been able to make some good news from the governor in the last couple of weeks around things that are able to reopen as the public health indicators have improved, but obviously it's still a very, very tough economic climate, and we all wish to be able to get back to normal or get back to a better normal, as Senator Booker said in another call I was on with him, to build a better future, a better future than we had in the past. But we all want to get back to being open. In the meantime, we're focused, as Michelle just said, on directing as many funds and resources as we can to stabilizing small businesses through this period, and because and doing so, as Senator Booker said so powerfully, against the backdrop of a reminder that in addition to the public health crisis and the economic crisis that we're facing, there's an unsolved multi-generational crisis of equity and fairness and equality that needs solved. That has been so visible the last 7 or 8 or 9 days after the murder of George Floyd and the unrest and the protests being expressed so powerfully throughout the country. That as we think about recovery, we think about stabilization, we have to think about incorporating that work into every program we have. And we've done that in this program that we're here to talk about today, which is our grant program. Or at least we've tried to take some steps in the right direction around the equitable distribution of these funds through this program. So with that, if I could have the slides advance, I think Virginia, you might be driving. Thanks, Virginia. So as Michelle noted, a couple of the principles we've had, obviously there's more needs than there are resources. It's always difficult to follow Senator Booker, who's one of the most powerful leaders, not powerful, but effective and impactful leaders and powerful speakers anywhere in American politics, particularly when he's talking about when senators talk about federal programs, they get to talk in the billions. I'm here to talk in the millions. So it's humbling to follow him, and I very much appreciate his kind words and his, I hope he meant it well, his gentle busting of my chops. I'll put on a tie next time for sure. But we've really been focused on getting funding into the market as quickly as possible. We know that this is a rapidly moving crisis. It's a rapidly deepening crisis. Hopefully we've hit the bottom and are back on the upswing economically, but we need money on the street as fast as we can. We've been trying to be as fast and efficient while also maintaining the right oversights and protections for taxpayer money that you'd expect, but trying to move fast. We've also been trying to leverage private dollars, federal dollars, philanthropic capital where we can. You might recall the same four organizations were kind enough to host a webinar like this a couple months ago. We had a $5 million program that was state resources. This program we're here to talk about today is $50 million. It's federal money from the CARES Act that Senator Booker and Senator Menendez and the New Jersey delegation were so important to bringing home for us. So that's really an important thing as we're thinking about scaling programs that are working. This is a good example of that. We've also talked a lot about not just grants, but having grants and loans and other financing tools, working through Cdfis, as Senator Booker just described, which are such great partners through some of our initiatives that we've had going on in the last couple months with them to really leverage our dollars and stretch limited resources and make sure we're getting as much private money piled on top of public money that we can. And also talking about technical assistance. I'll get into that in a moment. Next slide, please, Virginia. So we've had really 5 big components to our programs. I'm going to zip through this stuff quickly because people want to hear the main event, which is the grant. We've had the grant program. We've had the loan program. We've had some partnerships with Cdfis. We've had an entrepreneur support program, which I will talk about because that's still open. And then again, providing technical assistance support through groups like the African American Chamber, the Veterans Chamber, the Statewide Hispanic Chamber, and Rising Tide Capital. Next slide, please. So our grant, kind of the main event. I'll pause here on the old grant, the first grant, because of the $50 million that Governor Murphy allocated from the CARES Act funding for small business a couple weeks ago. The EDA board just approved recently allocating $5 million to fund some of the waitlist and backlog from the first round. Basically, we've now communicated with everyone who had an application in that first round. Either they've gotten good news, they got some funding, or they're on the wait list and they can expect to get some funding, or they should move on and apply for the second round. But we're in the process of more or less closing that program out. This program was limited in size. It was limited by dollars, obviously. It was limited to 10 employees. It was limited by industries. It excluded a few different classifications of types of businesses. And I'll talk about getting rid of that in a moment. But we've also, in the last couple days, a week or so ago, started making awards of this $5 million. We've moved about $3 million, $3.5 million to more than 1,000 businesses across the state under this backlog sort of filling exercise. So that's been an important piece of it. So if you are on that wait list and you are still waiting and you didn't get a note saying you should definitely apply for the next round, hopefully some good news in store for you in the next couple of days. But more importantly, as it relates to dollars, thank you, Jim. The bulk of the money, the $45 million, has been allocated to a new, broader, kind of we're calling phase 2 or round 2 program. This program is bigger and broader and more inclusive in a bunch of different directions and dimensions. One, it's up to 25 FTE businesses. The first time was 10, now it's 25. We've expanded to include sole proprietors. We've expanded to include home-based businesses. We've more or less gotten rid of the industry restrictions. Nonprofits were eligible the first time; they're eligible this time around, this time as well. And really importantly, as Senator Booker described, we're really trying to put a big focus on making sure that these funds are distributed equitably with a big lens on diversity and inclusion, which is why, Virginia, next slide, please. Of the $45 million, a third of the money, $15 million, has been allocated to eligible businesses that are located in Opportunity Zone eligible census tracts. Opportunity Zone program is a great, powerful tool that we have in federal law, thanks to Senator Booker's leadership in making sure this was included in the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017. It's a federal investment framework and a tax treatment for investing deferred capital gains. For the purposes of this conversation, what's most useful is it's a really good map of high poverty, high unemployment, low income census tracts where there's distress that predates this COVID crisis. It's only gotten worse, obviously, in the last 2-3 months. So 1/3 of the money is reserved for businesses located in those eligible census tracts, not just opportunity zones, but the full 750 or so census tracts that were eligible to be designated as opportunity zones. 20% were actually designated. Importantly, too, we're also really increasing our focus on outreach and inclusion language-wise. The application's available in English. It's also available in Spanish and can be submitted in either of those languages. We also have, we've contracted for interpretation services for 9 different languages. And we actually, if you don't speak one of those 11 languages, we have an email address that you can send us a note at languagehelp@njeda.com, and we can figure out, we will work with you to figure out how to help you and support you in whatever your primary language is. Next slide, please. We've also really increased our outreach efforts. We're making these this information available, as I mentioned, in 11 languages, so that we have really broadened our outreach efforts. We've also brought on 3 marketing and PR firms, each of which are one or more of minority, women, or LGBT-owned businesses to help us get the word out far and wide, to make sure that businesses, particularly minority and women-owned businesses, LGBT-owned businesses, veteran-owned businesses, immigrant-owned businesses, know about these programs and know to apply for them. Next slide, please. We're doing outreach in Spanish, as this just is one example of. We're really trying to push ourselves to do more modern and innovative and also inclusive marketing to make sure this really gets out, because this is EDA programs are not typically sort of broad-based. This is meant to be a broad-based program. We're usually working with a smaller set of potential customers. This is everybody who's under 25 employees. So we're reaching out really far and wide and working like hell to get the word out as best we can. I think this is one of the 50 or so webinars we've done this week. We've got another 6 or 7 on Monday, trying to get the word out as far and wide as we can. Next slide, please, Virginia. So what I thought I would do, I'm not going to do the full lecture here, but this is these slides we can share with everyone. This information is also all available on the state's portal. As Michelle mentioned, Tuesday at 9 o'clock is the big moment. Tuesday, June 9th, 9 a.m. The application will go live for this grant program. Earlier this week, on Tuesday of this week, a week in advance of that go live moment, we published a sample version of the application in English and Spanish on our website, cv, as in coronavirus.business.nj.gov. This is an open book test. We want everyone to get 100. It's meant to be relatively simple and straightforward. I'll walk through it in some detail in a moment. It's meant to be relatively easy to fill out. It's a government program with federal funding, so it's not as easy as easy as it could be given that construct. Some things you'll need: the basics of your business, where you're located, basic, full legal name, what kind of entity you are, your tax ID number, your headcount, your revenues as of March and May, respectively. We'll talk about why that's important in a moment. You're going to need to tell us if you got additional support from either the EDA or one of the SBA programs during this crisis. That does not disqualify you automatically, but it might impact the size or amount of funding you can get. The short answer is, if you have additional eligible expenses that weren't covered by those programs, you can access this program. It will require a little bit more information on the application, so bear with us when we get to that part. Next slide, please. So this, again, I'm going to walk through the application really quickly. This is all on the website at cv.business.nj.gov. As you can see, if you can see the little circles there's only 9 kind of sections of the application. Some of them are pretty quick. There's a welcome here. Next slide, please. Tab 2 is basic contact information, primary business address, an email address, business name, that kind of stuff. Next slide, please. The tab 3, basics about your business, what kind of entity you are, your tax ID number, your W-2 employees, your 1099 contractors numbers. You can self-identify as a small minority, woman-owned, veteran-owned, disabled-owned businesses. Next slide, please. Tab 4, we're going to ask about what industry you're in. There's no industry requirements here or restrictions, but we do ask so we know if we're serving, more manufacturers or restaurants or anybody else, just so we know who we're supporting. Next slide. Again, if you don't know your NAICS code, we will help you fill it out. This is basically a NAICS code search function. Next slide. Some basic screening questions on your business details. We ask a bunch of questions that may determine your eligibility. We're asking if you're a home-based business. This time you're eligible if you're a home-based business. Last time you were not. We're asking, there's certain things that are disqualified by state statute or federal statute. Gambling and gaming is a no-go. What are termed here adult, quote-unquote, activities are a no-go. Certain bankruptcy sales, transient merchant, those kinds of classifications would make you ineligible. So these are yes/no screening questions. Next slide, please. This is probably the most important tab 6. This is demonstrating your COVID impact. You have to answer 4 questions. Were you deemed essential by the governor's executive orders? Have you been open since March 9th? What capacity have you been open? That's an estimate. And then your revenues for the 3 months ending May of 2020 and 3 months ending May of 2019. That's how you're going to demonstrate your COVID impact. The sad reality is so many businesses are off meaningfully quarter over quarter or 3 months over 3 months, and that'll be how you demonstrate your COVID impact. If you are up quarter over quarter, I wouldn't brag about it too much to your friends, because almost everyone else is down quarter over quarter, and that would probably make you ineligible for this grant because you haven't been impacted by COVID if your revenues are up. Next slide. There's another function or feature of having federal funding. We have to do what's called a DOB analysis. Most people think of DOB as date of birth. In this context, it means duplication of benefits. Can't get paid for the same expense twice from federal dollars. So if you've got SBA money in the initial day, in the PPP or the EIDL or other programs, if you got EDA money, you would just need to disclose that. Does not automatically disqualify you. It just might mean that we have to adjust your benefits and just make sure you've got the right eligibility. Next slide, please. We ask some additional background information. These are, again, yes or no screening questions. Next slide, please. Questions like, you've had prior convictions or been debarred by public agencies, or have a contract canceled by a public agency. Again, not automatically disqualifying necessarily, but things we need to know about and adjudicate. Next slide, please. And then the last piece, just to certify the application. We can prosecute false statements. You're making best efforts not to lay off employees and rehire those you've let go. We understand that requiring rehiring is hard given the overall economic climate. And again, certifying you've had a negative impact by COVID. Next slide. It's an electronic signature. We share some data with taxation, some of the basics. I would encourage you all to read this in word for word detail before you sign it, but pretty basic certifications. And then one more on the last slide. You'll get a readout of what you're basically submitting. You submit your tax ID number one more time, and you do an electronic signature, and that's it. First time around, took most people about 15-20 minutes to fill out the application. My guess is this time's closer to 25-30, based on a couple more questions. But all the stuff you need to answer these questions, you should be pulling together over the these days and into next week, into the weekend. It's an open book test, but I would not encourage you to wing it on Tuesday morning and start pulling stuff together. Then you will likely be beaten in the submission race quite a bit. Next slide, please. Again, once you click submit, you'll get a grant, your application number. You'll get information for how to track the application. You'll get a PDF copy of your application for your files. Next slide, please. One question we get a lot is, how do I know I've got a sort of a mix and match of full-time and part-time? I've got some 1099s. How do I figure out what I qualify for? There's a grant size estimator on here. It's not a guarantee that this is what you'd be eligible for, but it basically says if you're eligible, on all other dimensions, and this is your employee count. Here's what you might be eligible for. Here's what you would be eligible for. This is located. This is live. This is on cv.business.nj.gov. I would encourage you to check that out again in advance of Tuesday morning. Well in advance of Tuesday morning. Next slide, please. Just a couple other things to mention. Senator Booker mentioned earlier CDFIs. We've been partnering with 6 CDFIs across the state as part of a first loss reserve fund program. It's a $10 million investment from the EDA to provide low interest loans. Next slide, please. I would encourage you to check out if you're in need of in search of loan capital, low interest loan capital. Check out each of these 6 organizations. Some of them operate statewide. Some of them have a bit more of a regional focus. They all have capital available to lend to small businesses up to $75,000. Not to exceed 3 3/4 on interest rate side of things, and basic flexible terms for COVID. So I would encourage you to check out the websites of each of these organizations to find out what they've got to offer. They're each a little bit different. Next slide, please. We also have an entrepreneur support program. Michelle mentioned earlier the innovation economy, which has been a laser focus of Governor Murphy and our entire team from the get-go. We've continued to focus on include and remember that focus during this COVID crisis for businesses that are equity funded, that are pre-revenue, pre-profit, probably can't get a loan from a traditional bank. If they can get a loan from their existing investors, third-party investors, we will guarantee 80% of that loan with some warrant protection to protect our downside. This is a program that we're taking applications for now. The application is on cv.business.nj.gov. Got lots of interest. It's not yet oversubscribed. It's a little bit more of a custom, sort of smaller opportunity set program, so it's not like we're going to get tens of thousands of applications for this. There are still funding available in it. I would encourage you to check it out. Again, if you're equity funded with third-party investors. Next slide. We also, before COVID, we were focused on small business. We're frankly more focused on it now. The majority of our efforts right now are small business focused. We have existing programs like a micro business loan program, a small business fund, and our direct loan that are used slightly bigger dollars. They're able to be used for capital expenses for fixed assets and equipment, and also working capital. I would encourage you to check out NJEDA.com to learn more about those programs. But again, those aren't quite as flexible and generous, frankly, as the COVID emergency programs, but they are valuable, valid programs that are still up and running. Christina Fuentes is on here with me to answer any questions on those programs in Cdfi. She leads our small business efforts and so many other things around the EDA. So she's on if you have questions about those programs. Next slide, please. One last program I'll mention is PPE. As businesses are opening and permitted to reopen, we're getting a lot of questions. We understand very much the challenge of finding affordable, reliable, predictable PPE supply for customers, for employees, particularly for employees. What we've done is a relatively simple, kind of low-tech, low-cost tool. A ton of businesses reached out to the state offering to sell us stuff, particularly during the peak of the crisis, whether that's the more complicated stuff or gloves and masks and more of the bulk stuff. We've basically turned that database around to the public and said, hey, these are folks who reached out to the state. If you wish to shop from this list, please feel free to. You can see at the bottom there's all kinds of fine print, all of which basically says we are not saying these are good products, good people, good vendors, good prices, nor are we saying they are bad people, products, vendors, or prices. But you should do your own due diligence. This is just a list that we've made available. If you wish to be listed on this registry, you can also do that. This is all on cv.business.nj.gov. It's all free. It's meant to just provide a kind of a marketplace and some information for businesses that need PPE or businesses that want to sell PPE. Next slide, please. I'll zip through this really quickly. Michelle was very kind to mention earlier, I'm co-chairing the Restart Recovery Advisory Council with Jose Lozano and Zakiya Smith-Ellis, who says here is Secretary of Higher Education, which is strictly true, but she is soon going to be the Governor's Chief Policy Advisor, which is in a week of not great news. The great news of her appointment certainly stands out, as well as the Supreme Court announcement this morning. So some good news peeking through the clouds here of Zakiya taking on that incredibly important role, and she's such a wonderful person and a great leader and a brilliant partner. Trying to take as much input and feedback as we can from the private sector, from nonprofits, from labor, from policy experts on how to smartly and strategically reopen the economy, to give advice to help advise the numerous decisions the governor has to make, either himself or in partnership with legislative leadership. Next slide, please. And I should mention all four, the heads of the organization, of all four organizations that are hosting this call are great, important members of that council. Deeply appreciative of their time and engagement on that. Last slide is just some FYIs. All the business information that's been flying around during the crisis has been on one-stop website. It's updated probably every day, probably several times a day. cv.business.nj.gov. There's also, I would encourage you to check that out and check that out regularly because it is being updated continuously. There's also an emergency assistance eligibility wizard, which we've been trying to keep as fresh as we can as new programs, whether they're federal or state, become available. If you're a business and you're not sure of the different alphabet soups of programs, including the ones I can barely keep straight that we're responsible for, check out this eligibility wizard. It's a couple simple questions. I'm in X industry and I have this many employees and so much revenue. What might I be eligible for? And it'll point you in the right direction. We also mentioned the grant size estimate calculator. Check, please, if you're planning to apply on Tuesday morning, please do that homework in advance. That is not cheating on the test. That is the way the test is supposed to be taken. We also have a jobs platform. Sadly, we've seen more than 1 million people file for initial unemployment claims in the state during this crisis. The sort of countervailing trend is that there are some businesses, not a small number of businesses, that are growing and hiring to meet a surge of demand during this crisis. I think grocery stores and delivery services and some health businesses, some cleaning businesses. There's more than 50,000 jobs listed on our jobs portal. It's again free, reasonably low tech, easy to use, low tech. It's fancier technology than I could make myself, but it's not like an augmented reality website or anything. It's pretty straightforward. That connects job seekers and folks that are hiring. If you want to be listed as a job, as a hire, if your company wants to be listed on there, you can do that on the portal as well. If you're looking for work, if folks that work for you that you had to let go temporarily are looking for something temporary, it's a really great resource to check out just to connect, again, job seekers and folks that are looking to hire. So with that, I think that is the end of my slides. Virginia, is that right? That's my last slide. I'm deeply appreciative of the leaders and the team of each of BIA and the Chamber, and CIA and the South Jersey Chamber, and Michelle and Christina and Tom and Tony for hosting us today and for their great support, feedback, even all throughout this crisis and then before it as well. So happy to take some questions and open it up to chat, whatever works for the moderators. Thank you so much. Appreciate the chance to visit with you.
So I do believe that there were some questions that were coming in. I'm going to defer over to EDA, who'll be moderating the Q&A with Tim. I do want to invite folks. There is a chat feature. You can place your questions in the chat, and that'll go directly to our program organizers. And for any questions that don't get answered today, we take all of the questions that are submitted today, and we send them over to EDA so that they can follow up in answering any that didn't get answered in live time. So with that, I want to turn it over to the team who's conducting the Q&A if there are any questions.
Sure, good afternoon. The first question is the Cdfi a grant or a loan? And what does Cdfi stand for?
Both great questions. So Cdfi stands for Community Development Finance Institution. That's basically nonprofit banks, for oversimplifies a little bit, but that's close enough. They are running loan programs, low interest flexible loan programs, up to $75,000. They have many programs, but the ones they're using EDA support for in this crisis are up to $75,000 loans, no higher than 3 3/4 interest rate.
Terrific. Will the new grant program allow for all 501c3 organizations, including churches?
The short answer is religious organizations can. They have to pass what's known as a First Amendment test, that the use of funds is for something, that complies with the First Amendment. But generally speaking, yes.
Okay. In reference to the NJEDA grant phase 2, can I apply for phase 2 if I received funding in phase 1?
Yes, you can. If you have more than 5 employees and you would qualify for more money under the new program, you can reapply. You're absolutely eligible to reapply. You don't know where you're going to be in the queue. You're not going to be first in line. We're not automatically porting those applications over. So you're absolutely eligible to reapply though.
If a company received a PPP loan, can it still apply for an NJEDA grant?
Short answer is yes. You're not disqualified for getting PPP. We have to do what I referred to earlier as the DOB analysis to make sure you don't get duplication of benefits. But if you have more expenses that are eligible or more impact from COVID than your PPP loan covered, yes, absolutely.
When will waitlisted applications from the first round be funded?
We have funded a lot of them already. We funded more than 1,000 already in the last couple of days and weeks, last week, couple days. We have communicated to folks what their status is. So and I would encourage you to check your spam. If you were expecting to have heard from us and you have not, check your spam because we emailed everybody several times. There's the wait list, and then there's the people behind the wait list. If you haven't seen an email that calls you on, quote, the wait list versus funds have been exhausted status, the wait list will likely get funded. The back part of the line is not going to be able to be funded. It has to go to the second round.
Minority-owned businesses are the most hit during the COVID crisis. Even during the non-COVID period, this segment is often less successful when pursuing federal contract acquisitions. How can this office help New Jersey-based businesses bridge this gap so minority-owned businesses can be helped? And how can we help so that New Jersey businesses can take advantage of teaming and winning more government contracts?
Yeah, great question. There's kind of there's two questions kind of that are thematically related but are a little bit different. The grant application process, one of the things we've done in this program very purposefully to include more minority and women-owned firms, which I 1,000% agree with the spirit of the question. struggle in good times and struggle really aggressively in bad times, like we're in now. We've reserved 1/3 of the money in this grant program for businesses located in Opportunity Zone eligible census tracts. Federal law prohibits doing MWBE set-asides. This is a pretty close approximation, or at least a decent way to allocate a good chunk of the money to businesses in distressed census tracts. So hopefully that will mean at least 15 million of this funding goes to businesses in those census tracts. On the contracting side, really important topic. We have a few programs that are helping contractors. We have one program that is helping contractors qualify for what's called bonding ready, qualify for surety bonding, which is a really important part of getting public contracts to do exactly what you're describing. Happy to follow up offline, maybe Virginia, if you can get the contact information from the questioner on the contracting stuff. I'm happy to talk about that a little more fully offline.
Terrific. This is similar to a question asked previously, but it's if someone applied online in the first round and the website said don't expect to hear back because they ran out of funds, how do they know if they are on the wait list or if they should reapply?
I think most folks were told not necessarily don't expect to hear back, but the odds were kind of long. We've communicated with all those applicants that we did receive completed applications for. If they're not able to be funded, they've been notified via email. Again, I would encourage you to check your spam filter if you didn't see an email from us, because we sent several waves of them that they should move on to round 2.
We are located in an opportunity zone and are trying to understand how we communicate this on our application.
It's pretty simple. You're going to put your business address in, and the application is going to know that.
The application doesn't clarify if the FTE number is only from WR30 or if it's total FTE, full-time employees.
I think WR30 is going to be the important form of using that. Yeah, so I believe it's WR30 is the key form there.
Is a sole proprietor's income considered wages?
How you do your own taxes and manage your own finances, I don't know. So I don't want to comment on anyone's specific circumstances, but sole proprietorships are eligible to apply this time, generally speaking. And it's how you use the money there's a variety of ways you can use the money.
Will an applicant be able to save the application and edit later, or should it be completed in one sitting?
You should complete it in one sitting. Last time we had 17,000 applications within a couple hours, so you should plan to do it in one sitting. And there's no mechanism to save it because it is designed to be kind of a one-time application.
What about seasonal employers? Less than 25 employees for 10 months, 100 for 2 months, which the WR30 indicates.
Yeah, so it's going to be based off your WR30 for the end of March. So that'll be the determinant. So it's where you were at the end of March. You also have to demonstrate COVID impact though. So if you are seasonal and don't have much revenue in the off season, and didn't have much revenue this time either, you might have trouble demonstrating the COVID impact. Obviously that gets less true the further we get into the summer for shore-based businesses, lake businesses, that kind of stuff.
How do I answer the question on whether we applied for the phase 1 NJEDA grant? I applied, but the funds were already exhausted. I did not receive any indication that we were in the pipeline to receive funding.
I would click yes that you applied. That'll answer that one, but then there'll be a follow-up question that says how much money did you get, and your answer will be 0.
Are healthcare businesses eligible?
Yes. This is fun. It's like a lightning round, Virginia. This is like a quiz show.
Let's see. My art school business was closed since March 15th, but we managed to do some revenue through setting up online classes. We still pay rent without using the facility and made purchases to make online classes possible. So what do we show for revenue?
Show what your revenues are. If they're somehow up, then we would applaud you, and that's very exciting. But if they're down, that would demonstrate your COVID impact. So show your total your business revenue.
As a child care center that remained closed until now and received PPP already, what loans are we eligible for to make up for the loss of revenue?
So depending on how many employees you have, you may or may not be eligible for our grant program. That's an eligible sector. That is an eligible sector. Commissioner Johnson and the team at DHS put out some grant funding as well for equipment and to sort of help folks get ready to reopen. I'd encourage you to check that out. I don't have the URL for that off the top of my head, but the Department of Human Services and Department of Children and Families are working on that. Commissioner Meyer as well. There's some funding available there. And then the loan program, I'd encourage you to check out that Cdfi set of partners for the 6 logos we had up on the screen before to see if there's any programs there that might fit for you.
Is the 25 full-time equivalent employee number based on pre-COVID levels or current?
At March 30th.
I think we're to the end of our questions, Tim.
Great.
Wow, how fantastic with that. You're right. It was a lightning round. I mean, you've just got this stuff going, Tim. I know you're living it. You're like eating it and sleeping it. And you know, it's a Friday afternoon, so I'm praying that you can get off the grid for a few hours this weekend and clear that head. Okay.
We'll see.
But in all seriousness, we really want to thank you. I know the tireless efforts. I know what it takes to lift these programs. Thank you for including us in our input in terms of revamping these programs. As you know, the business community, all my partners on this program today, we tried to give feedback from the practicalities of what was working and what wasn't. And I think you also know, Tim, that we're going to continue to advocate for more of the Federal CARES Act money to go to New Jersey small business because it can. And we know there's multiple demands on it, but you know, the only way to get this economy humming is to get those businesses in a sustainable way so that when they come back for the long haul, not just a, you know, we can't have them just come and go away. We need to ensure their viability and sustainability. So you want to say anything in closing before I let you off the hook and get off to your Friday afternoon?
I think I've got more webinars to do, but yeah, no, first of all, appreciate the very kind words, Michelle, and appreciate your advocacy and support. Yeah, supporting small business is incredibly important. This is the only, the sad reality is there's so many claims and needs for that federal funding. We need more federal funding in general. Perhaps the governor, I think the governor's been pretty clear on that need. We need more federal funding in general. Senator Booker was making that point earlier as well. Again, really appreciate the chance to visit with everyone. Please don't try and wing it Tuesday morning. Do your homework, fill out, get all the paperwork together, get ready to go for Tuesday morning. We really appreciate the chance to share the program with you. We really appreciate the input we got from the business community, both the chambers and all the chambers and business organizations, from nonprofit organizations, from lots of different voices that we think help make this program better. It's not perfect. It hasn't solved all problems by any stretch of the imagination. We're going to continue to work on additional tools to provide more, fill more gaps, provide more resources where we can. And I will, with that, bid you a happy rest of your Friday afternoon and a great weekend, and I'm sure we'll talk along the way.
Great. Thank you so much, Tim. Thank you again for your continued leadership and all you're doing for the state of New Jersey. I want to again thank and acknowledge our partners on this program, the New Jersey Chamber of Commerce, Commerce and Industry Association of New Jersey, the Chamber of Commerce of Southern New Jersey, and of course the NJEDA. And I invite everyone to visit the recovery page, which is njbia.org/recovery. Where there's the recovery and reinvention framework, there's best practice documents, there's toolkits, a lot of work from the New Jersey Business Coalition, which is an association of over 100 business and nonprofits group working together in order to get us through and see us sustain. So have a great day, everybody. We will see you soon, we hope, and be well and be safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Michelle.
Thanks, everybody.